there's just so much. There's just so much activity and stuff going on now that can take our attention away from what we really should be doing if you really want to understand the cycle. Yeah.
Cycle, can it end earlier?
I could. There's nothing to suggest that it has to do what it ought to. But if you've read my book or if you've seen my work for a while now, I just look at it to say the structure of the economy is still the same. We're still seeing the enclosure of the economic rent. We're still seeing banks creating as much credit as it can, which banks have to do because banks have to make money for their shareholders. They're always under pressure from their shareholders to increase the share price. So they increase the share price by lending more money or creating credit. All that activity is still the same as it's ever been. So whilst that continues, it's very difficult for me to say that the cycle's not going to complete. And, Jason, you've been following me for years and your brother and others as well. I get asked, I've had the same question for 20 years and I keep saying, well, from what I can see, the behaviour's still the same.
Basically, the fundamental reasons for how the cycle is put together and what's happened, none of those things have changed. Therefore, there's no reason to expect the cycle to end earlier until we see any break in those fundamental reasons. Then it's going to continue on. It's not going to end. It's not going to crash in 2022. It's not going to crash in 2023. This is the big overall massive crash. Sure, we'll see maybe we'll see a 20% bear market in the stock market. Okay, but the land value's not going to happen. It's going to happen after 2026 because the fundamentals are still there.
Yes. History suggests at the moment that the price of land around the world is still basically affordable by workers and by business.
And that ticks a lot of people off, though. How can you say that? How can you say $1 million is still affordable?
Well, I had no problem remortgaging in the UK, which I did last year. It wasn't any big deal. Had a few hurdles to satisfy, but it wasn't too bad. As we go forward, as house prices continue to go up, there will be a slightly larger percentage of the population that can no longer afford it. This is clear. There probably right now there's a percentage of the population that can't afford it. When enough of those get together to start making an impact at the electoral cycle, and when politicians start hearing that, those local politicians will take their concern to Canberra, and whoever's
we'll say for the US, but just same, broadly speaking, same.
They'll take their concern to government, and government will listen. The government in power wants to stay in power. They will introduce policies to assist those people at the moment who can't afford to buy their house. The policies that the government introduced to help these people will be policies that will, over time, make the condition worse. It never looks like it. That's because there's just simply not an understanding at an economic level to tell people that the policies that the government are introducing will, in fact, make things worse. Yes, and we'll get the wrong policies coming in as the cycle heats up.
Are there any signs that would indicate that the 18.6-year cycle is not going to be like others, shorter, longer, only to do with the fundamentals like we just said?
That's a good question. Yes, if interest rates go up too high, if the Fed has a dose of madness and just simply and keeps tightening, that would be problematic. So that's a possibility. I can't see that happening because if the Fed kept tightening from here, what do you think Mr. Biden's going to say? Mr. Biden's going to say, "Hey, people are starting to feel this. I might not get re-elected. You're handing the presidency to the Republicans." I think he's going to call the leader of the Fed, whom he appoints. Don't forget, he's going to call in him or her and say, "Hey, listen, I think you better stop lifting interest rates. This is insane now. It's getting a bit tight." Yes, this is all endogenous to the system, and the system doesn't allow the system doesn't allow itself to collapse like that. In writing my book, I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but for people who haven't heard it, the one thing I learned when writing my book over all of the history, and I wrote that between 1997 and 2005, then I had to search for the publisher. The one thing I learned, the real estate cycle in the United States, it just managed to find a way to complete. Whatever it had to do to complete, it did. On time, every time.
I can get that now because I've seen it for so many years.
Yeah.
Just saying that to someone who needs to look at interest rates and piece together all these different areas of the economy to come together, and just saying the cycle has to complete.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this. It's like,
I know.
how do you explain that?
Yeah. I know. But that's just how I studied history. That's what I learned. That was my number one learning exercise. It's given me the backbone.
What could you relate that to in everyday life? I know it's the economy and people want to say that they can't piece these things together, but, the world, the universe, it's all, things happen in cycles. What would you say? Maybe it's like the seasons. Doesn't matter what happens, whether we get cold, hot, this, that, the season has to complete.
Yeah.
Is that a fair enough comparison?
Yes. The inquiring mind of the population simply isn't there. The population as a whole, the empathetic levels of humanity at the moment, they're just not there to inquire into why all this is happening. And so whilst the inquiry rate and the ability to want to know why this is happening, there's not enough people asking that question, nothing's going to change.
Right. That's pretty fair.
Even if you do ask the question, if you ask the question in Russia, you'll be shot. If you ask that question in Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, he'll put you in jail. If you ask that question in the UK, you actually, or if you started demonstrating in the UK, you can't do that anymore. The police have the right to actually stop you. If you stand up in the US and suggest that, somebody's likely to have a gun and shoot you because they'll have an opposing point of view, or they'll call you a conspiracy theorist. If you stand up in Australia and do that, nobody's going to listen because they're all at the beach or they're all watching the cricket or football. If you stand up in New Zealand and do that, you probably wouldn't be understood.
What question are we asking here?
Why is this happening? Why are house prices so high? Why can't I afford them? Yes, the question. Nobody's asking these questions. They're not there.
They are asking them. Yeah.
Well, maybe some people are, but then you've got a media now that's owned by just 2 or 3 people. Only one person in Australia. There's only 3 or 4 worldwide that issue the news. If you want to imagine demonstrating now about trying to say America shouldn't go to war. It's just there's just always something to worry about these days, right? So it just isn't going to happen. Okay.
Yeah. I was going to get onto more war stuff, but it doesn't. Yeah, the war's not going to change it. There was a couple of questions around political unrest. How does that affect the cycle? Will it cause the cycle to end earlier? No, you mentioned earlier it's probably going to spur the cycle on.
You're asking good questions. Let me say one thing. With Russia, with their assembling of their army and tanks on the Ukraine border. This is nervous, right? It's a significant thing. It is something that you wouldn't want to get worse. Nobody wants to see skirmishes and then that get worse. If, for example, Russia goes into the Ukraine, we're talking possibilities, and I don't know if it'll happen or not. I don't have any inside information here. And let's say Mr. Xi in China decided to take advantage of this fact, and he then decided to invade Taiwan. Now that could be serious. That could raise the stakes quite substantially, and then Biden's going to have to look stronger than what he does at the moment. And let's say then Iran decided to take advantage of the situation and launched a few missiles at Israel or at Saudi Arabia, or things got a little bit out of hand that way, and then things could easily get crazy that way. That would put a stop to things. Probably it would be harder to get a loan. Probably things would get a little bit tighter. money would be diverted from speculative activities. Government could then say, well, we can't have all people speculating. Some governments around the world could then say, well, perhaps houses should be to live in, not to buy and sell so dramatically. Things could tighten up that way, and we could get a complete cessation. This could happen. There's nothing to suggest it could happen. It might happen. Now, that would be enough to bring the cycle to a halt, perhaps a little bit.
All right, we're going to some extremes here, trying to get all of these wars in different areas of the world to come together at the same time and create some sort of like decentralized war atmosphere.
This is nothing different to what happened at prior times in the cycle. It happened in 2001, 2002, 2003 when the US decided to go into the Middle East, right? And they decided that all the shenanigans that happened in Iraq. That was nervous times. It happened right throughout the 1980s. 1984, 1985, 1986, America was bombing Libya. They were bombing Tripoli. There was a really big stuff that happening in the Middle East. I remember that directly because my travel plans in 1985 and 1986 were directly affected because I wanted to be going through the Middle East. So I had to redraw things and do something else. They were nervous times. I can tell you, in the mid-1980s, people were seriously worried about things that might get out of hand, nuclear strikes. People were worried about what the Russians might do.
So yeah, it's happened before.
It's nothing
but because the people watching the news now, we're 20s, we're 30s, we're 40s, we don't have that experience, that awareness of what's emotional awareness of what's happened ingrained in us in that sense.
Nobody understands history. Absolutely nobody studies the history. If you did study the history, you'd be able to see through all the stuff that's going on at the moment. To me personally, I just find it laughable. It's just more stuff going on that I think government, in my opinion, I think governments or politicians deliberately create to keep us living in fear. Okay, I think the whole pandemic stuff was made far worse by the way governments reacted. It was farcical. The whole lockdown stuff. It has been shown. Professor Hankey, a good friend of mine, does some great study at the moment. He has conclusively shown that lockdowns don't work. He says they make absolutely no difference to what happens going forward. So why would you lock people down? One of the surefire ways, the best ways to get COVID is to stay at home. We should have had people out in the open air, exercising, doing stuff, meeting people out in the open. Sure, you didn't want to have people carooning in a nightclub or in getting very close together in a rave or something like that. That I understand. But the whole stuff of lockdowns, putting people at home, is just utter. Governments, I can tell you now, the other thing I learned with my book, right? Government policy makes things worse. It just is. It does. Okay, and I can tell you, going forward, government reaction, government policy will make things worse. The number one thing dictators want to do is keep their people in fear.
I don't think there's too many people that will disagree with governments are out there, media's out there to instill fear because it's the best way to control. That's proven.
And we can't do anything about it. Nobody can group together like that to actually do anything about it. So the cycle turns.
Biggest question marks in the future that could throw off the projections. Any question marks in the future?
Oh, World War. We don't.
World War.
Yes, we don't want stuff like that happening. We don't want some stupid dictator calling the shots, right? So, anything.
One world governments, all this sort of stuff. Will that throw cycles off if that actually happens?
because if that happens, it's absolutely certain that we'll get even less questions.
Because it's government.
If there's one world government, we'd be even under more control, and you'd have the people running the one world government buying up all the land, right? And wanting to keep us happy by having all of us plebs and you and me and everybody else not owning anything. Yeah, so they'd still change themselves. That's no different to anything that's going on now.
I might do the politics and government questions in a sec because that's a good one. Is there anything we can do to change the cycle as we see it now? Can we group together?
Nobody wants to change it, so it's not going to happen.
No. All right. We're not there yet.
Once you buy a house, we all want it to go up.
That's true. So then we have vested interests. They want us to have vested interests in it.
Yeah.
All right.
And people who have a lack of affordability, they're not a big voting bloc, really. It's the people getting my age that want to cash out their home. They don't want to see cheaper house prices.
No, definitely not. Not at that time. The Great Reset, is that going to change things? How will that affect the cycle? Owning land? Are we safe from...
What's the Great Reset?
The Great Reset, looking at 2030, was it the International Monetary Fund, IMF? One of the big money funds, the whole deal is to make everyone reset the economies, reset the worlds. You've heard...
It's all talk.
Yeah, I've done a butchering job of that, but you're saying it's all talk. You don't think this whole 2030 thing is going to happen?
No, it's all talk. No, because by 2030 they'll be too busy panicked about the downturn that's happened by then. The question will be saving the system. It won't be about the Great Reset.
Wouldn't that be saving the system? Do you need the Great Reset to save the system?
You don't save the system by resetting it. You save the system by propping it up, which is what they do.
Or reset it. We'll prop it up, reset it, become a one world government.
Look what happened in 2008, 2009 to the movement that was trying to get things
in the
reset.
GFC.
Nothing happened. It was just more of the same eventually. Banks were told.
So they're not coming after us and all of our stuff. You'll be happy. You'll own nothing and be happy?
No, I can't see any Great Reset happening like that.
No Great Reset. Okay, so no need to rush into golds and silvers, create your...
Not yet.
Your fortunes out in commodities.
Not yet.
Have your water and your food supply safe.
Well, I know there's an organisation I won't name that made an absolute fortune in 2011, 12, 13, telling Americans to buy a gun and bury it in the backyard and store all your cash there as well. Didn't do you very good, did it? You'd be much better off to buy stocks and land, huh?
See, all that stuff. Yeah.
What you should, I think you should be healthy. You should have a healthy dose of skepticism here.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever those people tell you, do the opposite, because that's probably what they're doing.
I don't know if they're doing the opposite. Some of them are very, they've given their life to this thing now, so they're doubling down on the Great Reset and to be prepared for what might happen after we get some sort of apocalyptic collapse.
This
might be a topic for another. Yeah, I don't think you're very interested in it, but it could be a topic for another video.
Move on.
Yep. All right. There's so much of that online. The Great Reset stuff.
Conspiracy theory, right? Don't go down the rabbit hole. Just focus on your investments and work out where the earnings are, and work out where the next piece of infrastructure is going in, where the government are building. Road, railway, there's plenty of that happening on the Gold Coast. Wherever the next railroad goes in, or the next long, what they call it, the tram routes and stuff. That's where.
I get the Great Reset. That takes a lot of pressure off. If someone's willing to accept that could be all BS, the whole Great Reset, and preparing for the worst, that can take a lot of load off your mind to be able to focus on more profitable ventures leading into this most profitable time.
This is nothing new. In the book, I go through all the early conspiracy theories. There was a big movement in the 1860s, 1870s in America.
1860s, okay.
Yes, in the 1870s, the people back then thought the Catholics were going to take over the White House. So they called themselves up to know nothings. Because they thought there was a big conspiracy theory that was going to collapse the United States.
Wow,
it's nothing new, right? This is all. It's just all been done before. Okay.
Could the government confiscate assets at the end of the cycle?
Not in the US.
Not in the US. What if we turned into some communist regimes across our countries?
No.
With China taking over.
China's something you wouldn't want to see China expanding too much. We've seen what the Chinese government does in Hong Kong.
Could they bankrupt the US? They have all the debt there and they own it, and then they come and
this is not a question for the current cycle. It could be a question for the next cycle.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Yes. Yeah, the China is becoming a creditor nation. They don't owe much to the rest of the world. That does and will put them in a position of strength. That is for the next cycle, not the current one.
All right. Health crisis has led to increased government powers. Financial crisis is next. Governments around the world are creating CBDCs, so central bank digital currencies, potentially giving them more power. What is your view on how the government will handle it in the next financial crisis, and if financial censorship is a real threat? So you're not about, this is actually from Michael, not about crypto, but what's the alternative solutions? So basically like financial censorship is kind of, what do you see happening?
What I could see happening there is the digital currencies and stuff. If the government's issue a digital currency, I think that would be bad for crypto. Government will want to control the digital sphere, which I think is coming. I think the digital sphere, digital currencies like that, may well actually be introduced the first time and may make themselves useful after 2026 as the downturn gets worse. The governments may find that a very convenient way to actually give everybody spending money. So they might.
That takes more power to them, because then there's no cash.
It'll depend on the government at the time. It probably won't change things very much. It just means that if we get a serious downturn after 2026, the way that you change that downturn is by increasing spending power. So the governments will borrow from the bank and they'll spend that money directly in the economy. The most convenient way a government would find to do that is to have everybody establish a electronic account or a digital account, and you could do that in Australia via your tax return number perhaps, or something like that, because everybody's got one. And then once you get your digital
social security number for the US and whatever,
whatever it is, then the government will simply give you directly 500 US straight into your digital account. And
so the UBI comes in. How is this not the Great Reset? You're just calling it
that would not be considered a UBI. It would probably be a one or two off payment. And
like they did in 2020.
This was done in the 1930s and other places. It's nothing new. The way to deliver it is new, but the idea isn't new. But the government would use that, of course, as a type of a digital currency. The government would use you've got to establish your digital account to get the money. Everybody will do that. There'll probably be some sort of things like to think about, like say, for example, if you're on the National Gambling Register, the government could probably say, okay, well, if you're getting $500, you're not permitted to gamble it if you happen to have a gambling addiction. The government might also say, well, if it's going to the family directly, and the husband has a history of spending it badly, the government could well say, well, we're only going to deliver it to the housewife who has to spend it on the children. You could get control issues like that happening. I suspect that the people would probably put up with that because it's a reasonable outcome. But again, you're going to have a loss of control of your individuality and the sort of things that you could and can't do.
There's more control.
Again, yes, a totalitarian government. I mean, they're probably doing this already. China and Russia and stuff. You could have a totalitarian government suggesting then that there are certain anti-government protesters that won't get that sort of money. We're not going to give it to you because you don't like our government or you don't like me. There's all sorts of questions that could come with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're trying to predict the nuances of after a crash with what the information we have now. So
yes, but I suspect digital currencies and stuff will probably come to the fore after the crash, because there'll be a convenient delivery mechanism to start getting people to spend again. And so
why would that affect cryptos? I can see it affecting stable coins, which are essentially just a one-for-one peg for the particular fiat currency. But why would it affect something?
If the government introduces its own digital currency, it won't want any competitors. Governments want control.
I mean, Bitcoin is its own thing, your digital gold, or Ethereum is like your digital internet.
Yep.
Obviously digital internet, but, running on it. So they're not in the same field.
No, I agree.
The same technology.
I'm not in the space where I could make a reasonable forecast of that, because it just could go anyway. Somebody might have some new invention or some other way to use it. So I've got no idea. But
fair enough.
again, in a downturn, and I've said this before, the things in a downturn that lose their value quickest are those things that have no earnings. And, and also often one of the first things that gets
Gold,
reacted,
silver?
well, in
There's
a
no
downturn,
earnings.
often the first thing that happens is people sell the things they can get rid of quickest because they've got debts to pay if the bank's calling in the loans. Okay, so you can work that one out from there. So whatever can be sold easiest often gets sold first to pay off the debts that you owe somewhere else.
Most liquid.
Yeah, the most liquid history tells you that's often gold or silver, and next downturn could be crypto.
But then the last cycle we saw gold and silver head up into 2011.
Yes,
that was its boom.
Mining, that had to do with China and the mining stuff.
So looking forward to the next cycle, we might not even see gold and silver.
Well, could be. Remember, every cycle's different. It can never happen in the same way. It's the same but different. It's based on the cause is the same. The downturn, what causes the downturn is always the same. It's land price gone too high and the banks have created too much credit on the high land value. It's always the same. But they manifest. They start differently. They manifest differently. There's always different issues. And the crisis always comes in the area that's new, least understood, and the weak point. And what that is, I've got no idea. I don't think anybody will ever forecast it because if we knew what the weak point was, somebody would act to make it less weak. So, yeah, hard to say.
Gold, silver, not a great store of value. I mean, we could see that from the last 40 years, but is that somewhere where you'd put wealth as a diversification?
If it starts making new highs, you'd have to look at it. If it goes above 2100, something like that, then it's game on. That's all-time new high.
That's for gold. You're saying 2100 an ounce.
Yeah, in US dollars.
Yeah. All right.
If it does, then you'd have to look at it. Then it's in play.
Does it have anything to do with... No, I was looking at Gann's financial table, but it was a question on that. How accurate is Gann's financial table? Moving on to a few Gann questions.
That's the best crystal ball I've got. There's nothing better.
Gann's financial timetable. Is it
Unbelievable.
off a little bit?
No.
2020... No?
If you've got Gann's
have you not
you've got Gann's original, it's off. I've updated it.
Phil has updated Gann's financial timetable. Gann did this in 1909, I think.
Yes.
Forecasting the ups and the downs, and it sort of laid out until about 1950. So he was on track for about 40 years, and I think it got slightly off track.
Timetable, his hand-drawn one-page timetable got slightly out because he had to do a physical layout every 18, 19 years in different columns.
Written.
Over 100 years, 18.6 exactly. It just gets slightly out. Year and a half had to be slightly adjusted. Damn good thing.
I'll put a picture of it.
Unbelievable.
All right.
We should.
We won't. Yeah.
We should do another. I got to go soon, but we should do another. We should do another session purely on Gann for people if they're related to. If they want to know a bit more about it.
More than happy to. I'll have to name it something that people will watch, otherwise they'll miss out on all the good info. But
reading a chart, very easy to do. Good. But again,
I've only got a few more. Sorry.
Yeah. Sure.
I want to know about your investment strategies, a few crypto-related questions, how we can use info. So nothing too deep from here, but just to get a bit of an idea of what you're doing. One more Gann question, quick if we can. War cycles, I believe we're in a war period at the moment. 1939 to 1945 was the previous, so about 84 years. Hence the riots, protests, trade wars, unrest. War has been the only event to buck the cycle. From your study of Gann, history wars, what is your view on the current war period we're currently in, its potential effects on the cycle and the aftermath? So even have you read The Fourth Turning?
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, but again, don't let your fears run away with you. It never manifests the way people think.
Exactly. Yeah.
More than likely, I think the war that people are talking about from a US point of view would not surprise me if it's civil. Okay, you simply get a completely divided US, which is already happening, and the war just becomes completely civil. You'll get a complete divide, particularly if Trump got back in. I think that would be a disaster from a US perspective internally, and you get a real divide. You could see, really been thinking out their hypothetical stuff, you could see perhaps a few blue states, California and one or two other states, just might start to raise the question of seceding. That's war from regards of a US cycle, and that would be going back 2 cycles back to 1861, which was war. I don't know. It's hard to say, and it wouldn't be physical as such, so it might be more cyber than anything else, and that would be just as much damage, but in a cyber sense rather than physical nuclear sort of thing. So it could be space related too. It's too hypothetical. I couldn't get into that, but I do know if with an 84 year cycle, if you go back and look at that, 1940s, 1860s. And the 1790s, the cycle's there, so it's coming up. That's due for 2028, 2030, and the possibility is if land prices really do turn down and we get a really tough cycle, that creates the ability for revolution because people get turfed out of their houses and banks foreclose and people don't like it, and we could get a really serious, nasty event, right? And that could lead to more serious stuff happening. If the US was having trouble, you could get Russia and China take advantage of the situation. I don't know. Hypothetical at the moment, but it's not due yet. It's due after 2026.
No problem. We'll continue on that. We've got plenty of time. Previous cycle, just looking at a couple of crypto questions. 1991, 2000, happy to be corrected. That was kind of the previous cycle. Saw the birth of the internet and the eventual .com bubble pop, which was not broken. So the NASDAQ didn't break the top of the cycle. So, we had that big boom. The NASDAQ boomed. Yeah, the NASDAQ didn't come up and break its peak that it hit in the .com. So it's about Bitcoin. If we're in the middle here, do you think Bitcoin will make it back to new all-time highs if we're still in this part of the cycle?
If the rest of the cycle heats up and get a really good runaway land boom, there's no reason why Bitcoin couldn't lead that. No reason at all.
Speculative, people gambling on art, collectibles, Bitcoin. Everything. Okay. The new latest thing. What sort of effect will DeFi have on the banking system? Decentralized finance. Is that going to come into play in the cycle? It's still too young.
Well, I would urge people with these questions to go back and read my banking chapters in the book. Every single real estate cycle, banks get the ability to introduce new technology that allows them to save costs, reduce their cost base, close more branches, and create more credit. So anything that happens, it will just allow banks to create more credit. That's great for the cycle. Just pushes land price higher.
Easy crypto questions. I think we could do more crypto questions in the future, so I'll leave it open for some guys and get on with. I want to know about your investment strategy. What's your trading, investing style, time frame, short term, long term?
Real estate's long term. I buy. I've never been a big seller. Stock market. I do run a fund these days. It's with Tim in Adelaide. People can email in if they want to know about the fund. Just trying to take advantage of the second half of the cycle. So we don't have tech stocks. We're into banks and real estate. And as you can see, the banks are starting to make new highs.
And that's how you're investing in 2022 and the remainder of the cycle? Yeah. Banks, real estate.
Half in cash at the moment as far as the stock market's concerned. I think
because they're expecting a little bit lower.
Yeah. And I'd like to see a few stocks make some lows. But again, there's a few mining stocks making decent new highs. So if they make new highs, I buy in. Pretty simple.
Yeah. That's kind of your criteria for determining where to go. Yeah. New highs, that's a GAN rule. Okay. Yeah. Do you buy and hold this stuff forever, or do you sell out at peaks?
Not in the stock market. These have their cycles. No.
All right. So it's trading the swings in the stock market, but in property?
Just hold. Why sell?
Just hodl. No, they say just hodl.
Just hold. Yeah, hold. Whatever it is. Yeah.
Do you own Bitcoin?
No, I don't.
Will you ever buy some Bitcoin?
Not now. I look back. Obviously, I had the chance. My co-investor, he bought some. I think the price was about $100 when he got in, something like that. I think he still got them. He didn't buy many. He spent a couple of grand. You know,
That's enough.
he teases me from time to time. I look back and obviously I say to myself, well, I should have bought some. At the time, though, back then, you couldn't get out. It was very hard to get out. You bought, and that was about it, really. It wasn't so easy. And there weren't the markets. There weren't the diversified stuff you've all got now. No, I'm not likely to. I'm not likely to. I might look at it to trade, but I'm not likely to
big returns coming. I'm telling you, big returns.
Yeah, if the cycle heats up, I can certainly see Bitcoin leading that. No problem at all.
You know, the chart also works really well to GAN analysis.
I'm sure it does. It must.
You'll love it.
Yes, I do look at that. Yes.
We've covered heaps today. You know, in terms of the information, how do we use it to our advantage when we're looking at the cycle? So, you know, if we can encapsulate everything we looked at today, essentially no recession in 2022. We're going up into 2026. If there is this big boom period, is it too late to speculate on land prices right now?
Get in. Just get in.
No?
It depends, though.
Not financial advice?
I can't understand everybody's personal position, so that doesn't permit me to give financial advice, and I don't. However, having said that, you know, I always think, I think it's fair to say, I think everybody should own their own home. And if you don't own your own home at the moment, I think you should behave as such to go out and make sure you do. I just think that's common sense, right?
Depending on what stage you're in. Like I'm thinking of, I'd rather invest and get the tax benefits from having the rentals, and then I can use that rent money to go and live in something else, and you get all the tax benefits rather than living in your own property.
Yeah, you can. You preempted me a little bit. Yes, you can.
Okay, sorry.
You can live your rent to live and invest to buy. There's no problem with that. Just own something.
Same. Gotcha.
Yeah, in the market, right? Yeah, so it's yours, right? And I think you shouldn't be heavily with at least one property you've got. You should not be heavily leveraged on it, so that the bank can never take it off you, whether you're renting it out or whether you're in it yourself. Yes, you should always have that covered.
So towards the end of the cycle, make sure you're not like 80% in debt or any more than that. You want the growth of that property has to be good, high enough. Otherwise, you want to sort of start settling down to.
Make sure you own it and nobody can take it off you. Yes, because you've got to have security for peace of mind. That's always step number one.
All right. Yeah, no, definitely. So if you've got peace of mind, that allows you to, it frees you up to go and do other things as well.
Yes.
What if there is, that's probably a good one to lead on to other stuff. If there's one key thing you want us to know, what would it be? Say for finance, one for lifestyle. One key thing.
Understand the real estate cycle. It will bring you peace of mind in your investment strategy. Because you can see through politics, you can see through the system, and you'll be able to see when somebody just doesn't know what they're talking about. So you don't need to follow their advice.
They might be thinking about us here. If they've watched 2 hours, then they probably won't be saying that, but could be us. One key lifestyle advice. You seem to live a pretty good life going between Jakarta, France, UK. Yeah.
I don't know.
On the spot.
Hard to say. Find a good partner.
Find a good partner. True. What's the worst mistake you think new investors make?
Listening to other people.
So what do you do then? You got to listen to yourself, but you have no experience.
Learn. So understand the real estate cycle, and if you're going to put your money in the stock market, understand that the best way to make $1 million in the stock market is to start with 2 million. Right? So stock market, take your money if you don't know what you're doing. So get educated. Crypto's
even better. Start with 10 million if you want to make $1 million in crypto.
Just get educated. That's all. And trade with money. Trade with something you can afford to lose in the beginning. Yes, certainly. In the
age old wisdom.
Yeah.
Any other resources you recommend to learn more about the 18.6 year cycle? We have the book, which I'll leave.
Yeah, the website.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave the link to the website
and
in the description.
Fred Harrison.
Fred Harrison.
Yes.
Who is also on Twitter as well. He's still alive and he is cool on the market.
have a look at my archives page. All right, on Property Share Market Economics, the website.
I'll leave a link to it in the description for the books.
Really good articles there. Just go back a number of years and read it.
So, and is that the best place to keep up to date with you?
Yeah.
Property Share Market Economics?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Yep. Do you plan to bring out another update edition of this book? This is at 2010, so this goes through the GFC.
Maybe.
Come on, Phil.
In a year or two, I'm going dark. Okay, I'm going to stop making any public announcements, and I'm going to trade the shit out of the market. Okay, in a year or two, you won't hear from me anymore. I won't be telling anything in public. I won't be giving any suggestions. I'm going to close membership of the site. So if you're not already in, you won't get in. Probably it'll be pulled down. I don't know what I'll do exactly. And then we're going to trade. Then we're going to trade. Just devote get right serious stuff. Right?
These are the trading groups that everyone dreams to be a part of, and it's all through crypto. So get in, you make the money while the market's hot, and then you go away on holidays.
Yeah.
That's it. You're going dark. End of 2023, we won't hear from Phil Anderson anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Soon.
Don't do it to us, Phil. We need you. We need you here.
We'll see.
All right.
Thank you for watching part 3 of the interview with Phil Anderson and Jason Pizzino. A Recession is Impossible in 2022. Now, there's a few books that Phil refers to in the interview. The first one is The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking, and also Fred Harrison's books. Now, the links to purchase those books are in the description below. Now, also, Phil talks about the fund, and it's an investment portfolio, an investment fund for Australian investors. We're working on US and UK investors, but this particular fund is for Australian investors, and it's with Oackley Financial. Now, Phil Anderson and Akhil Patel are on the investment committee, working directly with Oackley Financial on the stocks and timing for the movements of the fund. Now, there is a link also in the description to find out more about the 18.6 portfolio. Now, we also have in the description below an invitation for you to join our free newsletter, and we promise that we will send you every week for free our comments on what's occurring globally, relating it back to the 18.6 year cycle. Please do join our free list. It's the first place to start. Now, lastly, if you'd like to go back and watch part 1 and 2, please do go here. You can click on the screen right here to go back and watch part 1 and 2. If you'd like to see more of the PSC videos, just please do, again, click on the screen here, and that will take you through to our other videos.